My dad pounded the table and shouted, "Get out." Everyone expected me to cry. Instead, I said something that made him sit back down. What happened next changed everything. The paper bags from Whole Foods cut deep lines into my palms as I pushed through the front door of our Victorian home in Maplewood. I'd just finished a brutal 12-hour day at Henderson & Associates, skipped lunch again, and still managed to grab the organic almond milk, extra virgin olive oil, and those specific artisanal crackers Mom always insisted on, the ones that cost $8 a box. The hallway reeked of pine sol and burnt onions from whatever disaster had happened in the kitchen earlier. My heels clicked against the hardwood floors, echoing through the house like gunshots. Nobody looked up from their phones. I set the bags on the granite counter with a heavy thud, my shoulders screaming from the weight of everything. The groceries, the day, the life I'd somehow built around everyone else's needs. My wrists throbbed from typing legal briefs all day. Then Dad's voice sliced through the air like a blade. "You got my text message." I turned halfway around, still clutching one of the bags. "About what?" He stepped into the kitchen, arms crossed over his chest, jaw set like concrete. Behind him, I could see Mom hovering in the doorway, her face already wearing that look, the one that said I was about to become the problem again. "Your mother and I have been talking," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "If you're not going to step up and contribute more around here, maybe you don't belong in this house at all." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. Step up? I'd been stepping up for the past decade. I lived here, sure, but I also had my own apartment downtown that I barely used because I was always here, always covering something, always making sure the family ship didn't sink. Step up how, exactly? My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You've got a good job, Aurora. You're making decent money. But this household is drowning." He gestured around the kitchen like it was evidence in a court case. "Your mother's dealing with her back problems. I'm on a fixed income since retirement. And your brother Tyler is still trying to figure out his career path. I'd been paying the mortgage for 8 months. Utilities for longer than that. Most of the groceries." I glanced down at the receipt still crumpled in my coat pocket. $94.67, all for them. Tyler called from the living room, not even bothering to pause his video game. She acts like she's doing us some huge favor or something. My hands tightened around the bag handles until the paper started to tear. The crackers shifted inside, threatening to spill onto the floor. I looked down at that receipt one more time. $94.67. Just today. Just one trip. "I'm not acting like anything," I said quietly. "I've actually been doing." Dad's face darkened. "Don't get dramatic with us, Aurora." That's when something inside me snapped, not broke, but snapped into place. Like a puzzle piece finally finding its home. Mom appeared fully in the doorway now, arms crossed like a judge delivering a verdict. "We just want everyone to pull their weight, honey. That's what families do." "Pull my weight." The words came out before I could stop them. "I've been pulling everyone's weight for years." "That's not," Mom started. "Then why?" I interrupted, my voice still calm but carrying something new, something that made them all go quiet. "Does it feel like I'm the only one holding anything up around here?" The kitchen went dead silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and Tyler's video game sounds bleeding in from the living room. Dad's jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. "You think we don't appreciate," he began. "I don't think anything, Dad. I know." I let go of the grocery bags. They slumped onto the counter with a soft thud. I just got off a 12-hour day. I haven't eaten since 6 this morning. But sure, let's talk about contribution. They were all staring at me now like I might explode, might finally have the breakdown they'd been waiting for. But I didn't feel like breaking down. I felt like waking up. "You want more from me?" I walked toward the door, my heels clicking against the floor with purpose now. "Here's what I'll give you." I pulled the door open, feeling the cool evening air hit my face. Before stepping out, I turned back to look at them one last time. Mom with her mouth slightly open, Dad with his arms still crossed but his posture less certain, Tyler finally looking away from his screen. This house no longer has a daughter named Aurora. The door closed behind me with a quiet click that somehow sounded louder than any slam ever could. I was raised to believe that being reliable was the same as being loved. If they could count on me, I mattered. If I came through every time, I belonged. It had started so innocently when I was 17, just covering a water bill when Mom's freelance graphic design check was late. She'd hugged me tight and whispered, "You're such a good girl, Aurora. You'll always take care of us, won't you?" That whisper became a contract I never remembered signing. By 26, I was covering internet, electric, and most groceries without being asked. By 29, I was quietly transferring money for their car payments, cell phone bills, and Tyler's endless emergencies. He got a new iPhone every Black Friday. I'd been using the same laptop since college. When Dad's blood pressure medication wasn't covered by insurance, I drove across town during my lunch break to pay for it at CVS. When Mom's back surgery required a specialist, I put it on my credit card. When Tyler's car broke down, again, I co-signed for the repairs because his credit was shot. Nobody ever said thank you. Nobody ever offered to pay me back. Family takes care of family, Mom would say, then text me a grocery list. I never asked for much in return. I wasn't the type who needed constant praise or expensive gifts. I just wanted to be seen, to be acknowledged as more than the family ATM. But it wasn't until I started keeping actual records that I realized how deep the rabbit hole went. 3 weeks before tax season, sitting in my downtown studio apartment at midnight, I opened Excel and created a spreadsheet. I called it Family Expenses and started typing. Every transaction from the past 10 months. Utilities, groceries, car repairs, medical copris, credit card minimum payments, even Tyler's therapy sessions that I somehow was still funding. Each line had a date, a description, and an amount. The total at the bottom made me stare at the screen for a full 5 minutes. $23,847.92. I wasn't angry. I was just tired. Bone deep, soul-weary tired. I printed the spreadsheet and taped it above my desk in the apartment I barely lived in because I was always at the house, always available, always on call. The paper hung there like evidence in a crime scene, proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't selfish, wasn't overreacting. That night, I made myself chamomile tea and sat on my tiny balcony overlooking downtown Portland. The city lights twinkled below like stars, and for the first time in months, I didn't check my phone. No texts asking me to pick up milk. No calls about broken appliances. No Venmo requests from Tyler. Just silence. And silence, I was learning, didn't demand anything in return. The apartment was small, a studio with barely enough room for a bed and a desk, but it was mine. I'd signed the lease 6 months ago, thinking I needed a backup plan, somewhere to go when the house got too overwhelming. The walls were painted a soft grey I'd picked out myself. No committee meetings. No family votes. I moved in gradually, bringing one suitcase at a time. A coffee maker that brewed exactly 1 cup. A bookshelf I assembled alone while listening to a true crime podcast. When Tyler asked why I needed my own place, I told him it was for work. Closer to the office. It wasn't entirely a lie. The texts started the next day. Mom's were novels, long, winding messages about how I was being dramatic, how families stick together through tough times, how disappointed she was. Dad's were shorter but sharper. Call your mother. Did you check the mail? We need to talk. Tyler only texted when something was broken or when he needed money, usually both. I didn't block any of them. I just turned off the notifications and let their words pile up like snow I didn't have to shovel. My bank account stopped hemorrhaging money. No more automatic transfers to cover overdrafts I didn't create. No more panic deposits when someone's check bounced. I started tracking my own spending again. Small luxuries like herbal tea blends, a decent shower curtain, groceries that reflected my taste instead of everyone else's dietary restrictions. Evenings became mine again. I cooked real meals, nothing frozen or rushed. I played music while I prepared dinner, jazz, mostly, something I'd never been able to do at the house because Tyler complained it was old people music. I didn't check my phone during meals. Didn't have to wonder what crisis would be waiting in my messages. Some nights I'd lie in bed just listening to the city sounds outside my window. My body, for the first time in years, wasn't braced for impact. No one would burst through the door needing something. No emergency that somehow became my responsibility to solve. I started sleeping through the night. Full, uninterrupted sleep. 8 hours that stretched to 9 on weekends. There was no applause for this recovery, no audience to witness the small miracle of rest, just the quiet satisfaction of a life being rebuilt one peaceful night at a time. 3 weeks into my new routine, just as I was settling into my desk at the law firm, My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Card declined at grocery store. Fix this. No greeting. No explanation. Just a command, like I'd missed a shift at a job I'd never applied for. I stared at the message for exactly 10 seconds, then placed my phone face down and poured coffee like it was any other Tuesday morning. By lunch, Tyler was calling. When I didn't answer, he tried again. And again. On the fourth call, I picked up, curious to hear how far they'd stretch this thing. You knew we needed that money, he snapped before I could even say hello. I said nothing. You think you can just stop helping and nothing happens? You think you're better than us now because you've got some little apartment and a spreadsheet? Still nothing from me. He hung up with a frustrated curse. Not even a goodbye. That evening, I opened my laptop and navigated to the county assessor's website. I typed in the address of the house I grew up in, 1247 Maple Street, Maplewood, Oregon. Status: pre-foreclosure. Final notice issued 2 weeks ago. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just stared at the screen with a strange sense of clarity, like puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. I'd been sending $1,400 a month for nearly a year. Sometimes more when emergencies came up. I'd never seen the actual mortgage statement. They'd never offered to show me the paperwork. I thought I was preventing disaster. I thought I was the hero of this story. But now I could see the truth. The money hadn't been going to the bank. It had been going everywhere else. Tyler's car payments, Mom's shopping sprees, Dad's golf club membership he thought I didn't know about. They hadn't needed a daughter. They'd needed a system. And that system had just crashed. I closed the browser tab. I didn't need more details. The truth was simple and stark. I'd been funding their lifestyle while they lost the house anyway. I poured myself a glass of water and sat on the floor next to my small dining table. No music, no TV, just the sound of my own breathing. They would scramble now, try to guilt me back into position, twist my boundaries into betrayal. But I wasn't part of their structure anymore. I wasn't the safety net catching their falls. I had simply stepped aside and let gravity do its work. The phone lit up again, Mom's name on the screen. I let it ring until it went quiet. I hadn't planned to call them. I'd been practicing silence like a new language, wearing it like armor. But something about that foreclosure notice pushed me toward action, not from anger, but from a need for completion. Sunday afternoon seemed right. They'd all be home. Dad watching football, Mom doing laundry with HGTV in the background, Tyler pretending to job search while scrolling through social media. I dialed the house phone. It rang twice. Hello? Mom's voice, sweet but strained. Put me on speaker, I said. A pause, then the soft beep of the speakerphone. In the background, I heard familiar sounds, the creak of Dad's recliner, a soda can opening, papers shuffling. I'm here, Dad said curtly. Same, Tyler muttered. I took one steady breath. Where did the money go? Silence. What? Mom asked, like she hadn't heard clearly. I sent over $1,400 every month for almost a year. I checked the mortgage status. The house is in foreclosure. So I'm asking, where did the money go? Mom cleared her throat nervously. Well, your father had that dental work, and the water heater needed replacing. Tyler's transmission went out, and grocery prices have been insane. You act like we went on some vacation, Tyler cut in. Stuff happened. We were gonna figure it out. Dad's voice was defensive. It's not like we meant to deceive you, Aurora. Things just got ahead of us. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't sigh dramatically. You never showed me a single bill. Never asked if I could afford it. Never mentioned paying me back. You just assumed I'd cover everything. Aurora, sweetie, Mom started. We're family. You shouldn't need a contract for. That's exactly the problem, I interrupted. I didn't have a contract. I didn't have my name on the deed. I didn't even have a vote in how the money was spent. I just had the privilege of paying for everything. The line went quiet except for the distant sound of the football game. I've heard the voicemails you've left. I've read the texts. You've called me selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. But here's what I actually am. I was your daughter. You turned me into your ATM. A long pause. Then Dad's voice, smaller now. Without you, Aurora, we're losing everything. I looked out my apartment window at the small maple tree swaying in the courtyard below. No, Dad. You lost everything the moment you stopped seeing me as your daughter and started seeing me as your bailout plan. I hung up. Not from anger, not from spite, just from completion. The kind that doesn't need applause or permission. I placed the phone face down on my table and reached for the envelope I'd been avoiding, the one with my name written in Mom's handwriting and their return address in the corner. Inside was a final foreclosure notice. Words like delinquent, default, and eviction proceedings printed in bold red letters. My name wasn't anywhere on the deed, but somehow the notice had found its way to me. Like they'd given the bank my address as a backup plan, like they'd wanted me to see this one last attempt at guilt. I folded the paper once, then again, and tore it in half. Not from rage, there wasn't any heat left in me. Just quiet understanding that this burden was never mine to carry. I opened our old family group chat, the one that stretched back 3 years. Photos of birthday cakes I'd paid for, screenshots of grocery receipts, passive-aggressive emojis when someone's request was ignored. I scrolled until my thumb cramped, seeing the pattern clearly for the first time. Then I stopped scrolling and typed one line, "I'm not your backup plan anymore. Goodbye." I sent it, left the group, and blocked all 3 of them. Mom, Dad, Tyler. The phone went completely still. Not silent. Stillness is different. Silence waits for something to fill it. Stillness accepts what is. I closed the banking app I'd left open and opened a different one. The savings account I'd started 3 months ago when I first began to suspect this day was coming. Small deposits at first, money I would have normally sent home. Today I made the largest deposit yet. Then I walked to the boutique I passed every day on my way to work, the kind of place I used to think was too indulgent. Inside, I tried on a pair of soft leather boots I'd been admiring for weeks. They fit perfectly. I paid full price without flinching, without calculating how that money could have helped someone else. Walking out of the store, I didn't feel like someone escaping. I felt like someone coming home. That evening, I cooked dinner for one. I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving since Christmas and lit the vanilla candle Tyler used to complain made him sneeze. The flame flickered steadily, casting warm light across my small space. The spreadsheet still hung above my desk, but I no longer needed it as evidence. The numbers had served their purpose. They'd shown me the truth when I was too tired to see it clearly. Now the boundary wasn't in those figures. It was in the breath I could take without bracing for impact. They would call it betrayal, abandonment, selfishness. Let them. I had given my time, my money, my energy until I was completely drained. Now I was giving one last gift, a clean ending, and the space it created was exactly the size of peace. As I settled onto my couch that night, I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't dared do in years. I started browsing travel websites. Maine kept catching my eye. Acadia National Park, coastal towns with names like Bar Harbor and Camden. Places where I didn't know anyone, where no one knew my story or expected anything from me. The money I'd once wired to save someone else's house was now quietly building towards something entirely mine, a solo trip, a new winter coat, a better mattress. Things that didn't require justification or committee approval. 3 months later, I was hosting my first dinner party in the apartment. Nothing fancy, just my co-workers from the firm, a few neighbors I'd gotten to know. The table was small but it held everything we needed: homemade chili, cornbread from a local bakery, that spinach dip everyone always brings to potlucks. My contribution sat in the center, lemon squares made from my grandmother's recipe, the one Mom never let me use because they're too fancy for regular dinner. We sat cross-legged on the floor with plates balanced on our laps, napkins tucked into shirt collars like kids at a picnic. It was warm and unforced, the kind of gathering that happens when people show up without expecting anything more than good company. At one point, someone asked why I never talked about my family. It wasn't prying, just curious small talk. I paused for a beat, then smiled. Some stories are better closed. Nobody pushed for details. They just nodded and kept eating. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the dishes were clean, I made chamomile tea and sat by my window. The small herb garden I'd started on the fire escape was thriving. Rosemary, thyme, basil that smelled incredible when I brushed against it. I'd been planting more than herbs, though. I'd been cultivating habits. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. Wednesday evening yoga classes. Morning walks before work without checking my phone once. And in the quiet spaces between everything else, I made lists: books to read, places to visit, goals that belonged only to me. Maine was still at the top of my travel list. I'd booked the trip for next month, a cabin rental near the coast where I could watch the sunrise over the Atlantic. I didn't know anyone there, and that felt like the whole point. It would be a place where silence was scenic, not loaded with expectation. The money that once disappeared into the black hole of someone else's poor choices was now building something beautiful, a life that fit me perfectly, like those leather boots I'd bought myself. I used to think home meant shared blood, shared walls, shared obligations. Now I understood better. Home was wherever I could breathe freely. It was in the rosemary growing outside my window, in the text from my coworker asking for my lemon square recipe, in the gentle hum of my ceiling fan that carried no tension or hidden agenda. It was in the perfect stillness after people leave and nothing feels broken. That night, I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and wrote packing list, Maine at the top. For the first time in my adult life, I was planning something purely for joy, funded by money that was completely mine, in a timeline that served nobody's needs but my own. I was 31 years old, and I was finally free. Outside my window, the city hummed with 10,000 stories of people finding their way home. Tonight, I was one of them.